share a story idea. Why should we do this now? What is new about it? And what is next? Like you have to have that new now next factor to make it newsworthy.
Okay.
And then another thing that you can do, and this is going to be like your low hanging fruit, is look at what's trending nationally or locally. If it's something happening nationally, how can you localize it?
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Win the Hour, Win the Day. And I am your host, Chris Ward, and I'm super excited to have Christina Nicholson in the house. She is going to talk to us about PR, but it's going to be a game changer. Let's dive right into it because it's a whole different kettle of fish than what you think of. Welcome to the show, Christina.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I'm excited to chat with you.
I love talking about PR. And I think for so many people, PR sounds, I know for quite some time, I thought it meant, okay, once you achieved a certain amount of status or you're an influencer and you're important, then you have this PR person. I didn't understand that it is the tool to give social proof, to give you influence, to give you access so that you more people can see the magic of what you do. And that we should all be using PR like right from the get-go, not waiting till we get to some sort of status, correct?
Yeah, like I didn't even realize this was a mindset people had
Mhm.
until I launched my media mentoring program. So I have the agency that does everything for you, but then I had people reaching out to me like, okay, I want this, but I can't afford an agency. And so many people would say, oh, I'm not ready. And this is why I'm not ready. And I'm like, whoa, this is how you get clients. This is how people get to know about you. So they join your email list. So they follow you on social. So they email you. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's just the perception of media. Like you see people there and you're like, oh, they're only there because they're a big deal. They have a big company. They have a public relations agency. They have a big team, yada, yada. No, that's how you get all of
Yes.
this
Yeah,
stuff.
so we did get that. I thought it was like the fanfare. Like now the parade comes because you have earned some sort of social status or influence, but that's how you get it. The PR is the train to there. And I didn't understand that for Eat It Up now, but I didn't understand it before. So let's back up for a second. I'm not a big proponent of the whole tell us your backstory because I'm like, I just want to get to the good stuff. So does my audience. But what makes you really super unique at PR?
Is that I used to be so annoyed by publicists and I did not want to work with them because I was on the receiving end of all of their pitches as a TV reporter and anchor. And most of their pitches were terrible. They clearly had no idea what we did in a newsroom. So after I had a couple of kids and I wanted a more flexible schedule, I left TV, got a job at a PR agency. I was only there for 6 months because I had the worst boss ever. And then I went off on my own, fast forward 8 years, and we are here. And I am pitching the media from the perspective of a TV reporter and anchor. And I'm teaching small business owners how to do that themselves as well.
Yeah, and that is fascinating to me because now having a podcast, and we're very lucky. People, podcast has been well received. We've got almost we're like 10, 10 away from 1,000 5-star reviews. So we're super lucky. And I get pitched a lot. Now, still do pitching. I still want to be in other podcasts when I'm talking about how to win back time and scale your business in less time, get 25 hours back a week within the first month of working with us, all that stuff. And people want to offer me their services. We'll get you on more podcasts, or then they pitch me. And I have to say, they do a horrible job of it. It's dry. It's boring. It's a formula. You can see it. And I have a very unique way of doing my pitch where I get a lot of compliments on it. And I get indoors that people tell me all the time, hey, we would normally don't deal with that, or people at maybe even at my level, but because your pitch was so good. So it is a game changer. It's a game changer. So let's talk about, first of all, we're all used to saying, okay, podcast, be a guest in podcast. That's fantastic. But something I think that's being neglected, and I used to lean into this back in the day, is local TV. And that's still something I think that we're overlooking. And you mentioned that as well. So how does that work with local TV, and where do we start?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to TV, like you said, there's a million different forms of media. I think when it comes to TV, it is the most intimidating to people. But for that reason, it's also where you get the most credibility. There's so much that you can
Mm,
do to leverage a TV appearance. And I think regardless of where you live, you can 100% get a spot on TV, whether you have a small market or a big market. I worked with somebody in my media mentoring program, and she lives in Denver. Colorado, which is a pretty big TV market. And first time she's ever been on TV. And now she's like a regular. She goes on like once a month to talk about her expertise. So I think where you start, like from the very beginning, first you need to come up with good ideas. And there's a couple of ways to do that. One is enterprising ideas where you're really just coming up with them on your own. This is what we did in TV. Every morning we would have to go to a meeting and we would have to share story ideas, like pretend nothing else is going on in the world, share a story idea. Why should we do this now? What is new about it? And what is next? Like you have to have that new, now, next factor to make it newsworthy.
Okay.
And then another thing that you can do, and this is going to be like your low hanging fruit, is look at what's trending nationally or locally. If it's something happening nationally, how can you localize it? I remember there were so many times when I worked in TV. For example, when Corey Monteith died, he was a character on Glee and he overdosed on heroin years ago. And we did a story. Obviously, everybody's already talking about it. It's going to be covered. But how do we localize that story? We got somebody in South Florida who was a specialist in addiction. And he talked about how heroin was a drug of the 80s and it's coming back now. And so that is a local expert jumping on what's happening nationally to get that local coverage. So you got to think this guy just earned coverage, potentially seen by millions of people. It's getting on our website. He's getting a backlink. It's going to be shared on our social media. And then he can even take that TV clip and turn it into an ad on social media, put it on his website, put it on his marketing materials. There's so much that you can do, but the first thing you have to do is have a great story idea. And then after you ace that publicity on the first time, you can turn that into a recurring role like once a month on your local TV station.
I'm tingling all over. I'm getting me all hopped up here. I'm really excited because, okay, first of all, I want to highlight what you said, new, now, next. That's just really clear, really powerful. What's new, what's now, what's next. Okay, so everyone write that down. That's really poignant. New, now, next. Okay, the other thing I'm thinking of too is I live in a remote area. Look out the window. There's some very friendly looking cows across the street. Okay.
Of course they're friendly. They're Canadian cows.
They're Canadian cows. So I used to live on the outskirts of Toronto, but now I live in a remote area. But with the whole craziness of the last few years in lockdown, there's really no local market here for me where there was before. But I guess with how everything's changed, I could be doing Zoom interviews on local TV shows. That's still an option for me, correct?
Yeah, that is something like if there's silver linings in COVID, that is one of the things is we were open to the idea like, oh, we can talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere. And for what you talk about, Chris, it's not necessarily specific to a location.
No.
So you could be on any TV station in any market at any time. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. Like, it's not just going into your TV station to sit on a weekend morning and do your live 3-minute segment. You could be interviewed for any story at any time, both locally and nationally, because of the internet.
Yeah. And because now I'm thinking like I have been working, one of the strengths, the pillars to what we do is helping people have outsourcers and build a team that they can afford. But the foundation underneath that is completely different than how the corporate world works, because it's a very parentified system. You hire someone, you check on their work like a parent, child, teacher, student, and that creates a new job. And that's why small business entrepreneurs like, I don't have time to hire. I can't do my work. It's just quicker for me to do it myself. And I'm like, they should be managing you if you got things in play, right? So why I say that is I could be speaking to the whole, now that we're moving towards virtual offices and how do you manage teams like that, and all the stuff that I've been doing for 10 years now lends itself to, because I said, when this all started, I said, this is going to be like wartime when the women went off and took the men's jobs and they came back. There was a whole shift in the marketplace. And I said, there's going to be a whole shift. They're going to realize that this is very expensive and that people can work virtually. It's all computers anyways. Gone are the days where you hand a piece of paper to your boss and say, is this right? That's not a thing. So I wasn't even thinking of that. So I could be tapping into the bigger conversation. Even though my market is entrepreneurs, it doesn't matter, because then I become an authority and get some PR press that I can lend itself to my small business community.
Exactly. And not only that, but look at how many stories have been done about quiet quitting. I feel like when it comes to quiet quitting, that's something that you could also jump on. When you see numbers in the job market, like right now, we have a lot of people making layoffs in companies. So then maybe people are going to start their own business because they've just been laid off. I mean, we saw that during COVID. A lot of people got
Yeah.
laid off and they were like, I'm going to start my own business. The quiet quitting, that's because people want flexibility. They want their time back. So
Mm.
there's so many things, Chris. Like I feel like with you wouldn't even need to really enterprise story ideas, just see what's trending in the career market. And you could lend your 2 cents and add some color to those data and that statistics. And you would just be like on TV everywhere all the time.
But see, you know where my faulty thinking would have been until you, because I think we've had other PR people on here, and I think every one of them brought some magic, but I think yours is even more powerful. It's clarity. Where I would have got stuck on that, but I deal with small business owners. I'm super passionate about them having a business that supports a life, not consuming it, having fun, all that stuff, right? And we're not here to grind it out. So then I would have thought, oh, if I'm on all these local TV shows, like as if that's my problem I don't have right now, but if I'm on TV talking to enterprise or what's happening there, they're not my people. And my people are listening to podcasts or doing this. They're not listening to those TV shows. They don't have time for TV. So I would have thought I would be pulling away from it, not understanding that I'm borrowing that authority and then I can bring it anywhere. Does that make sense to you?
I understand what you're saying. I think maybe it's overthinking a little bit.
Oh, yes, that resembles me very much. But what I'm telling you, yes, I resemble that. So what I'm saying to you, I agree with you now. You're exciting me that it is so much more accessible, it is so much more powerful. But like at the beginning of the conversation, I think a lot of people for the long time thought PR is something you got when you became quote unquote important. And then I think that for me, and I can't be the only one that got lost in this path, was thinking, oh, but I can't getting on that show. Either they're not my market and they won't want me, or if they do want me, I'm not speaking to my market. But what you're saying is it is the social proof. Who cares what show you're on about anything? Really?
And there could be overlap. Every single media outlet can serve you a different purpose. So yes, it could be the social proof. It could be something you leverage later, or you could tweak your talking points a little bit. So even if the story we're jumping on, like these big companies making layoffs, you don't know that those people laid off, they could be watching and they could be starting their own business, or they could be getting jobs at smaller, like you don't know 100% who's watching. I once got a client in a website called Trend Hunter, and they had a product and they were focusing on moms. And I remember the client wasn't like too excited about it, but a producer for the Rachel Ray show saw it. And they were like, oh, we can include this in one of our segments for our mom lab. And that led to them getting coverage on the Rachel Ray show because a producer there saw it. So there's so much that can happen that you don't even know. And if you can speak to that topic, there's no reason why you shouldn't.
Wow. Okay. You keep talking because I'm over here just fantasizing about different things I could do. I've left the interview and I'm just like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta go do
the
stuff.
Possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
People.
Okay. So I think it's really exciting. And I think probably, would you not argue, Christina, that heaven help us, especially small business community, that this is something that we're missing out on. Like, I think there's huge opportunities here that we're just not even talking about.
100%. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, people have the mindset that they're not ready. So I hope by now we have squashed that.
Okay.
If you're ready for a new customer, a new client, a new sale, a new email on your list, then you're ready for this. And two, people just don't know where to start. So that's why, like, I do what I do. Okay, let me help you get started. You just have to do it. Stop making excuses. This is what you do step by step, and just do it.
Okay. So where would we start? Tell us the local TV shows. Tell us what are the misnomers there.
Yeah. So when it comes to local TV, you just kind of have to understand like the show formats. Like you're not going to lead the news at 6 p.m. Like those are for like the harder news stories. Yeah. Look at what they're covering on the weekend mornings. Look at
Okay.
what they're covering on the weekday mornings and
Okay.
on the afternoon shows, because that's when things are softer. That's when they can bring in guests to chat. That's when they also have a little bit more time to be a little bit more creative. So
Okay.
those are the newscasts that you're going to want to pitch. And again, you're going to have your idea. Hopefully, you're jumping on something that's trendy that people are already talking about. Prove it's newsworthy and it's not just you trying to promote yourself. That's probably the biggest mistake people make, as I'm sure
Okay.
you know when you receive the pitches to be on the podcast. So you definitely want to do that. So as far as who to contact and how to get their information, journalists are on Twitter.
Okay.
So look
Yeah.
on Twitter 100%. And then also go to that TV station's website. And they always have a news team page. They have an about page. They have a contact page. And I would suggest watching the news and seeing, okay, who are the anchors of the morning shows? Who's anchoring the afternoon shows? And then you also have the contact information for the TV station. And many times it's the generic one. Just let us know about news, whatever.
Mm.
But put in your subject line like 9 a.m. weekday show. And then they will forward it to that producer, or they know what show you're pitching. So, it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of people
Mm.
who don't know that information.
That's a good tip. Okay. And then when you do that, we write a little email because we know we don't want to send attachments. They're not going to open them, stuff like that. In my case, could I have sometimes what I have is I use Bomb and there's a video in there that it's not a link, it's a video and it's even got a GIF. There's movement to it. And sometimes I even hold up the person's name. Is that too creative, or they just want to read really quickly? They don't have time to open an email.
I would say they want to read really
Okay.
quickly. Just because they get so many emails, and
Gotcha.
you want to be short, sweet, and to the point. Like the days of pitching with press releases has been over
Yes.
for years, people. Like it's
Right.
not the 70s or 80s. Don't send a long, boring press release. Instead, it's, hey, if you're talking about this, I'd love to come in and add XYZ. I'm a local, like the fact that you're a local person is what's going to make you stand out if you are pitching locally. If you're not pitching locally, then don't worry about that. Just say where you're based. And again, why you are the person to talk to about this, like specifically why what makes you different. And don't be afraid to get super specific. This is another mistake people make, is they'll keep it so generic. And
Yes, those are the ones I get. I don't know what you
Yeah.
do. They're so generic. And I bet you some of these people, and they're coming from PR companies, I bet you do have something to offer my show, but you're trying to cover all the bases and send these to 100 people. And so I don't know what you offer. It's so vague. I'm not interested because it's too vague.
Yeah, like you can't visualize
No.
what that interview is going to be about. You don't know what your audience is going to take away because you're just saying stuff that everybody else has heard before. If you're pitching, Chris, okay, give me an example, because you say your podcast pitch is the bomb. What do you do when you pitch other podcasts that makes it so different from everybody else who does what you do?
Okay, here's what I do, which is not going to fall into your formula, but let me add to what you just said for a quick second. Is I also think something I learned along the way, which goes against what we would think, is you try to write these emails or whatever and sound so professional. But the example you just give, hey, if you're talking about this, I'm your answer, like to the point, cut it down to the bare bones instead of all this flowery stuff. And I used to think you throw your shoulders back and try to sound professional, but no, that you want to have a meaty conversation with someone who's busy, get to it. So I think that's a big takeaway that everyone should pay attention to. For me, what I do is I do my homework. So I'm going to check out the podcast. I'm going to listen. And then I say this here. Hey, Steve, so super excited. I was so thrilled I tripped across your podcast. Actually, that's not what I say. I have Adele scripted down. Hi, Chris Ward here. And what I'm about to say, I think has a lot of weight to it, because I would describe myself as a podcast junkie. Christina, when I tripped across your podcast, I think I ate up 3 or 4 episodes before I said, Chris, you need to move on with your day. And some of the things I notice, and then I will give them a couple of compliments about things that they do. And I said, you know what, it's really just like easy learning, or I'll say something and they're sincere what I say. And then I say, as I was listening, I thought you and I could have a really meaty conversation. I've actually written this book, Win the Hour, Win the Day, and I've included my backstory below. People tell me all the time there's a lot more depth and scope to this than they originally understood. And I think it would really lean in to your bigger messaging. Now, I sped that up. I do it a little bit better and it's a little bit softer, but I'm complimenting them. I'm showing them I've done my homework. I'm showing them my personality. I'm saying I'm going to over deliver for their audience and that it would lean into their messaging. And that seems to be very well received.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because they're getting an idea of what the interview is going to look like. And it's the same for TV. I had a mentoring client who got a local segment on TV in San Diego. Again, huge market, first time on TV. And we pitched around the fall. This was us enterprising an idea. What are people talking about in the fall? Back to school. So we put together a back to school pitch. And in that pitch, she had 5 different talking points. And they were very visual, because if she's going to come in the morning and talk about packing a lunch for your kid to go back to school, then she's going to bring some food. We're going to put it on a table. We're going to set it up nice and pretty. And she did that. She included that. And she said that, what makes her different? She's not just a dietitian, but she specializes in working with parents who have kids who are picky eaters. And then she shared some stats and some data that talked about like how many picky eaters there are, how it affects them, anxiety, all of the things. She literally sent that like on a Monday. Wednesday, they got back to her and they're like, hey, we want you to come in next week. And it was booked.
That is a really great example on what I would think is the most over talked about mundane topic ever. It's back to school, we're packing lunches. What can we do differently? Okay. You know what I mean? And who's going to, I think if I had your job or I was on the TV show, I'd be, back to school. How can we make bologna sandwiches or peanut butter and jam sound interesting again?
Exactly. Because
I think
they're going to cover it.
Yeah. But what you did, I totally get it now. Okay. That's awesome. All right. Let me get out of your way. Continue. Throw us some more of your wisdom.
So that's just one example of the back to school thing, because they're going to cover back to school. Again, what is a different angle? What is a different take? Like a chiropractor could do like the weight of the backpack, how to distribute the weight, what to put in the backpack, what not to put in the backpack. I mean, there's just so many different angles. And that's why I say looking at something that's happening locally or nationally, that's your low hanging fruit. Like what's already being discussed and how can you put your spin on it? And it could be almost anything. Like even with you, Chris, like I talked about the career field, what's happening with women in business. So here's another example. I was working with Jessica Stansberry, who's a big YouTuber, helps women build businesses from home. She was in my media mentoring program. And I said, okay, what you do is cool, but we can't just pitch what you do. That's too promotional. So we went to Google and we typed in moms making money from home. And then we filtered 2 things. One was the news tab. So we're only looking for news stories. And the other was the last month. So we're only going to see news stories that happened in the last month. And we found a news story. It had, again, data and statistics, and it said 4 out of 10 breadwinners are moms. So I said, okay, perfect. We will use this as our pitch. Like this is something in the news. 4 out of 10 breadwinners in the home are moms. Here we have a local mom in Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, never been on TV before, getting on TV in a huge market because she's a local person who helps people become the breadwinners in their home. So here's a local person just adding some local context, adding some color to these stories, making it more conversational instead of just those data and statistics. So we pitched that story, and I think she holds the record. We literally had our first conversation 9 a.m. on Monday. By noon, she was booked with that pitch, with that angle on TV in Charlotte.
I think another thing you do amazingly well, because I've talked to a lot of PRs people, because it has, once I understood the concept, it really did start to interest me. And I think that it's overlooked and misunderstood by so many small business owners and entrepreneurs. But a lot of what I hear, and I know there's some truth to this, but a lot of what I hear is, okay, you go on Twitter and we find out how to find out that the journalists are here and whatever, and then start building relationships and like their stuff and all this. And then I get, there is strength to that. And that is a great supportive program, but it seemed like a new job. And it seemed like telling somebody every day at school that they're pretty and eventually 2 years from now, they'll be your friend or something, right? So what yours seems to be far more strategic, and there seems to be a plan so that you can be proactive with it and navigate through it within some element of how much you put into it is how much you're going to get out versus just hoping to like somebody. There's relationship building, and that has its element, but that's not the only payoff there.
It's just like in any business and anything you do in life. Relationships help you.
Yeah, they help.
I have relationships with a ton of people who work at a bunch of local and national stations. That doesn't mean they're going to cover whatever I pitch them. At the end of the day, if your pitch sucks, it doesn't matter about what your relationship with the person is. It doesn't matter if they're your best friend. If your pitch is bad, your pitch is bad. So as long as you have a good story to tell and you have a good pitch, honestly, the relationship takes a back seat.
Okay. All right. So we can pitch TV, We just have a couple minutes left. I think another thing that's often ignored is the potential of blogs. That seems like a whole different thing, especially if you're writing to say, can I write?
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of people want to get that online exposure, and we keep talking about pitching, but like a way to almost guarantee consistent coverage on a regular basis is by being a contributor to an online outlet. So, for example, I wrote one article a week for Inc. magazine for 2 years. And some people will say, oh, you're working for Inc. for free. Okay, but I'm not spending money on ads. I am in Inc. magazine once a week, and I am taking that article that I write, I'm sharing it on my social media. And then people on LinkedIn would be like, oh, you're in Inc. You write for Inc. I want to write for Inc. I want to get an Inc. How do I get in there? And then that leads to a sales conversation. So think of where, if you had all the money in the world, where would you want to pay to advertise? Instead of advertising there, figure out a way to get featured in there. And even better, if they're accepting contributors, become a contributor, and you are writing about your expertise maybe on a weekly basis. And then another amazing benefit to writing for an outlet is it opens the door for you to interview so many people. So if I said, hey, I want to interview you for my blog, they're not going to be interested. But if I say, hey, I want to interview you for Inc. magazine, they want to be in Inc. magazine. So I get to meet some pretty cool people and build relationships with some influential people that I can, again, share on social media, tag them, then they share it. Then their audience sees that they shared something that I wrote about them. And then their audience becomes my audience. Like, so many ways you can leverage being a contributor to websites.
So I didn't know. I guess I thought, I don't know. I guess they thought somebody knocked on your door and blessed you with a star and found you again, not understanding the PR. I guess I assume these people in Inc. were pursued by Inc. or something. When you talk about blogging, I'm thinking, okay, how do I get on a parallel blog of somebody's website that whatever it been in business 5 years or at my level per se. So I didn't even think about that as pursuing larger outlets, trying to be a contributor, happy to do it for free, and would have saw it as a luxury, just didn't even know that was a route.
Oh my gosh, yes, because you got to think these outlets, they like right now, especially, they just need content. They need to push out so much content on a regular basis that they are happy to get an expert to write for them for free. People are even paying, which I don't suggest this. This is a whole other conversation. But there's things like the Forbes Coaches Council and the Entrepreneur Leadership Network where people will pay them to write for them. That's just another form of advertising. I don't suggest doing that because you don't have to do it like that. And you lose your credibility when you pay to be in a place.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you all day, Christina. Seriously, Christina, where can people find more of your brilliance?
Thank you. If you want to become a contributor, visit 16places.com, because at 16places.com, I put together a list of 16 high quality websites that are currently accepting contributors, what they want you to contribute about, and the contact information of who you need to contact. So 16places.com will get you that. I also have my own podcast, Become a Media Maven. So you can come listen to me. If you're not tired of hearing me talk, you can check out Become a Media Maven on the app. On social media, I am at Christina all day, and I talk back if you talk to me.
Okay, I'm going to check out all those resources, and they'll be in the show notes. And you have been a blast. We so appreciate you here. And everyone else, we will see you in the next episode. That was fantastic.